The stars burned quietly above the battlefield, but the ground below was far from peaceful. Explosions shook the dry planet of Verilon. Smoke rose into the sky. It was the 9th day of the war between Earth's allied forces and the Xerelian Empire. Both sides had lost many lives and neither wanted to retreat. High above the planet, a small silver ship raced through the clouds. Inside the ship was a young Xerelian boy, Prince Rin, the only child of Queen Thalira. His guards were trying to protect him. The queen had ordered him to be taken far from the battle zone. "We must reach the fallback zone," one of the guards shouted, but it was too late. A human missile locked onto the royal pod. The ship shook violently. Warning lights flashed. One of the engines exploded. In seconds, the pod broke apart and began falling toward the surface. "Brace for impact," a guard yelled. The pod hit the ground hard. The crash left a deep hole in the rocky wasteland. The wreckage burned for hours. No one came. All signals went silent. Far away, Queen Thalira waited in her war chamber. Her long silver fingers gripped the arms of her throne. Her glowing eyes stared at the last transmission. Then it went dark. "No, not my son," she whispered. Her advisors confirmed the location. The human missile had hit directly. No signs of life were detected. Queen Thalira stood in silence for a long time before letting out a cry that echoed across the chamber. The Empire mourned. She swore revenge. Meanwhile, far from the main battle lines, a lone human soldier named Kai was on patrol. He walked carefully, through the rubble with his pulse rifle scanning for enemies. He was tall, quiet, and not known for talking much, but he had sharp eyes and a good heart. That's when he saw something strange, a small metal hatch buried in the rocks. It was still warm. Cautiously, he cleared the debris. The hatch clicked open. Inside, a soft, scared whimper escaped. Kai froze. There, curled up and shaking, was a small alien child. His skin was light blue and his eyes were wide with fear. He looked no older than 5 or 6 in human years. A tiny, royal symbol was marked on his shoulder. Kai looked around. No soldiers, no witnesses, just him and this alien boy. You're still alive?" Kai whispered. The child didn't speak. He just stared, trembling. Kai lowered his weapon slowly. He remembered orders, capture or eliminate, but something inside him said no. This was just a child, lost, hurt, alone. Kai reached into his pack and pulled out a water bottle. He opened it and held it out. "Here, you need this more than I do." The boy sniffed the bottle, then slowly took it. He drank carefully. His eyes softened a little. Kai sat down beside the pod. The heat of the day was fading and night was coming. "I can't leave you here," he said. "You'll die." The boy said nothing. But when Kai stood up and held out his hand, the child took it. That night, Kai found an old bunker hidden under the rocks. It was cold and half broken, but it offered shelter. He made a small fire using old scrap and watched the child sleep. He thought about the war, the hate, the orders, the faces of soldiers who followed blindly. And now, this child who had done nothing wrong was sleeping under his care. He didn't even know the boy's name. "I'll call you Rin," he said softly. "It fits you." The boy didn't wake, but a small smile touched his lips. Outside, the sky was quiet. The stars were the same for both alien and human eyes, and as the fire cracked softly, Kai made a silent promise. "I'll keep you safe, no matter what." Morning came slowly on the war-torn planet. The sun rose behind dark clouds, casting a pale light over the rocky land. Inside the hidden bunker, Kai sat near the cold fire, watching the small alien boy sleep. The child had curled up against an old blanket Kai found in the corner. His chest rose and fell gently. For a moment, the world outside felt far away. Kai knew he had to make a choice. The army patrol would be coming through the area soon. If they found the alien child, they might take him. Or worse. He looked at the boy again and shook his head. "I'm not turning you in," he said softly. The child opened his eyes slowly. He sat up and looked at Kai, his face still full of fear. But there was something different now. Less panic, more curiosity. Kai smiled and pointed to himself. "Kai, that's my name." Then he pointed to the boy. "You, Rin." The child blinked. Then quietly he repeated Kai. Kai was surprised. It was the first word Rin had said. The name sounded different in the boy's voice, but it was clear he understood. Kai nodded. "Yes, that's right." He reached into his pack and pulled out a protein bar. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He broke it in half and offered one piece to Rin. The boy took it slowly, sniffed it, then began eating. He made a face. Clearly he didn't like the taste, but he didn't stop. Kai chuckled. "Yeah, I know. Human food isn't great." They stayed in the bunker most of the day. Kai listened to the radio in silence. Human forces were still fighting in the east. Xyrelian scouts had been spotted in the area. The war was far from over. He looked at Rin again. The boy was now drawing shapes in the dust with his finger, circles, stars, and a strange symbol that looked like a crown. "Are you royalty?" Kai asked, more to himself than to the child. Rin didn't answer, but he pointed at the symbol on his arm. It was glowing faintly. Kai hadn't noticed it before, but it was clearly something important. Maybe a royal mark. "Great," Kai muttered. "You're not just any alien child, you're their prince." That made things even more dangerous. If the Xyrelians knew Rin was alive, they would search for him. If the humans found out, they might try to use him. Either way, Rin would be a target. Kai stood up and checked his gear. "We can't stay here." He looked at the map stored in his helmet display. There was an old comm station 5 miles west. Maybe it still worked. Maybe he could send a signal, just not to the humans. "We need to find a way to reach your people," Kai said. Rin looked up, confused. Kai knelt down and drew 2 figures in the dust, one with human armor, one with alien features. He drew a path between them and pointed at Rin, then at the alien figure. "Home," Kai said. Rin's eyes widened. He nodded quickly. He understood. That night, they moved carefully through the dark. Kai carried Rin on his back when the ground was too rough. They avoided patrols, hid behind rocks, and used the shadows for cover. At one point, a human drone flew overhead. Kai ducked low, holding Rin tightly. The drone passed without stopping. "We're not out of this yet," Kai whispered. They reached an abandoned fuel station just before dawn. Kai decided to rest there. Rin curled up beside him, already fast asleep. Kai sat with his back against the wall, his rifle in his lap. He looked down at the boy again. "You're just a kid," he said. "But somehow you're changing everything." He thought about the orders, the war, the hate on both sides. And here he was, risking his life for someone who wasn't even human. But deep in his heart, he didn't regret it. "I'll get you home," he whispered, "even if it costs me everything." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant ships. The war was still going on, but something new had begun, something that would change the fate of 2 worlds. The sun was just rising when Kai opened his eyes. A soft light filtered through the cracks in the broken walls of the fuel station. Rin was still asleep, curled up against an old blanket. The boy looked peaceful, even in a world torn apart by war. Kai stood up quietly and checked the area. The scanners on his wristband blinked red, movement nearby. He sighed. Patrols were getting closer. He knew time was running out. "We have to move," he whispered. Rin opened his eyes, blinking at the light. When he saw Kai getting ready, he quickly stood up too. He didn't ask questions. He simply followed. Together, they moved west, heading toward the old signal tower. Kai remembered reading about it in a briefing. It had been used by the Xyrelians before the humans pushed them back. Now, it was abandoned, or so they hoped. As they walked through the rough terrain, Kai thought about what might happen next. He couldn't send a message to his own people. They would never understand why he saved a Zerelian prince. They would see betrayal, not mercy. And the Zerelians? They might kill him on sight, but at least Rin would be safe. Worth it, Kai muttered to himself. Rin looked up at him. Kai smiled a little. Just thinking out loud, buddy. They stopped to rest under a rocky ledge. Kai gave Rin half of his last food bar and poured a little water into a cap. The child ate quietly, watching the sky. Suddenly, a distant hum filled the air. Kai's eyes narrowed. He pulled out his scope and looked toward the south. 3 black ships were flying low, heading in their direction. Not human design, Zerelian scouts. They're looking for you, Kai said. He pulled Rin behind a rock and covered them with a camo cloth. The ships passed overhead, scanning the ground. One of them slowed, lights flashing. Kai held his breath. Rin clutched his arm tightly. After a few tense moments, the ship moved on. Kai let out a sigh of relief. That was close, but it didn't feel like good news. If the Zerelians were looking for Rin, it meant they suspected he was alive. That also meant someone might have picked up the escape pod signal. And if humans found out first, things could get worse. We have to hurry, Kai said. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a cliff. Below, in the valley, stood the old signal tower. It was damaged but still standing. Pieces of Zerelian tech lay scattered around it, half buried. In sand and dust, Rin's eyes lit up. He pointed excitedly. Kai nodded. That's the place. They climbed down slowly. It wasn't easy. Kai had to carry Rin part of the way. When they finally reached the tower base, they pushed open the rusted doors. Inside, the air was dry and thick with dust. Broken screens flickered. A few power cells still hummed with low energy. Kai walked over to the main console and wiped the surface clean. Let's hope this still works. Rin stepped beside him and touched a glowing panel. The screen lit up, brighter. Zerelian script filled the air. Kai couldn't read it, but Rin moved through the controls like he had done it before. You know this tech? Kai asked. Rin gave a small nod. Then do what you can, Kai said. Call your people. The boy's fingers moved quickly. Strange tones filled the air. A high-pitched ping echoed from the tower. Somewhere, far away, a signal was sent into space. Kai stood back and watched. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing. He had done his part. Suddenly, a loud beep came from his wristband. Incoming human drone detected. Kai's eyes widened. They're coming. He looked down at Rin. The boy's face was calm, as if he knew everything would be fine now. I hope you're right, Kai whispered. He loaded his rifle and stood by the door. If this was going to end, he was ready. But what neither of them knew was that far beyond the planet, aboard a grand warship, Queen Thalira had just received the signal, and her eyes were full of hope for the first time in days. The old signal tower was now quiet. The message had been sent. Rin sat near the wall, watching Kai carefully prepare his gear. The soldier's eyes stayed on the entrance. He could feel danger getting closer. The alert on his wristband had not stopped blinking. A human drone was circling nearby, and where drones went, soldiers often followed. We don't have much time, Kai said in a low voice. Rin didn't speak, but he understood. He stood and walked to Kai's side. The boy was calm, but there was something in his eyes, something that looked like courage. Kai looked at him and gave a small nod. You're braver than most soldiers I know. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. Boots hitting stone. Multiple people. Voices. Human voices. Kai moved fast. He grabbed Rin and pulled him behind an old console. He raised his rifle, eyes focused on the doorway. A moment later, the door burst open. 3 human scouts entered, dressed in light armor. One of them carried a scanner that beeped loudly. There's power in here, one said. Something was activated. Kai stayed silent. Rin pressed close to his side. Then the scanner picked up a life form. It beeped louder. Over there! Kai stepped out fast. Stop! Don't shoot! The soldiers raised their weapons. Hold fire! It's Sergeant Kai! One of them shouted. The others lowered their rifles slightly. Kai, you've been missing. For 2 days, the lead scout said. What's going on? Kai kept his gun lowered. I found something. Someone. But I'm not handing him over. The scout frowned. What are you talking about? Kai looked at Rin, then back at the men. He's just a child. He's not a threat. I'm taking care of him. The third soldier stepped forward. Wait a second. That's a Zarelian. He's a prince, Kai said, and I won't let you take him. Silence filled the room. The soldiers looked unsure. Orders are clear, Kai, the lead scout said. Any alien life form is to be reported, you know that. Kai shook his head. Some orders don't deserve to be followed. Before anyone could speak again, a loud shriek came from the sky, a sharp whirling sound. The soldiers looked up. Zarelian fighters. Incoming. They must have tracked the signal, Kai said. Get out. Move, the lead scout shouted. One of the fighters fired at the tower. The walls shook as the blast hit the side. Dust and metal rained down. Kai grabbed Rin and ran for the back exit. The scouts followed, covering the retreat. Outside, the valley was alive with chaos. A second fighter landed nearby. From its hatch stepped 2 Zarelian soldiers, tall, armored, and armed. Kai stopped. He raised his weapon, standing between Rin and the aliens. One of the Zarelians pointed at Kai, shouting something in their language. Rin stepped forward quickly. He raised both arms and shouted in return. His voice was strong and clear. The Zarelians froze. One of them lowered his weapon. He scanned Rin with a glowing device, then dropped to one knee. It's really him, Kai whispered. The second Zarelian moved forward, bowing his head to the boy. Then he looked at Kai. There was a long pause. Then the alien gave a slow nod of respect. The human scouts stood stunned. What just happened? One whispered. Kai exhaled. He told them who he is, and they believe him. Moments later, a large Zarelian ship descended. Its engines made the ground tremble. Soldiers stepped out in full formation. They formed a path. At the top of the ship's ramp, a tall figure appeared. Queen Thalira. Her eyes landed on the small figure of her son. For a heartbeat, she did not move. Then, slowly, the queen stepped forward, her face unreadable. Rin took a few steps toward her. His lip trembled. Mother, he whispered. The queen stopped in front of him. Her hands reached out and touched his face. A tear slid down her cheek. She pulled him close. The soldiers bowed. The humans stood in silence. Kai lowered his head. His job was done. The wind moved gently across the valley, blowing dust into the air. Rin was safe in his mother's arms now. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The queen held her son tightly, as if afraid he would disappear again. Her strong face softened, and her silver eyes filled with warmth. Kai stood at a distance, tired and silent. His armor was scratched, and his body ached from days of running and hiding, but he felt calm. He had done what he came to do. Queen Thalira finally looked up. Her eyes met Kai's. The look was long and quiet, full of questions, but also something else. Respect, she gave a nod. 2 Zarelian soldiers stepped forward and guided Rin gently onto the ship. The child turned his head and waved at Kai. His small hand shook, but his smile was full of trust. Kai gave a small wave back. The human scouts stayed frozen in place. They had never seen anything like this. Aliens and humans were enemies, but what they saw didn't look like enemies at all. One scout stepped close to Kai. Are you really going to let them take him? He asked. Kai turned to him. He's not ours to keep. He belongs with his family. But he's one of them. Kai gave a tired smile. He's a child. That's all that matters. Suddenly, the Zarelian queen stepped down the ramp and walked toward Kai. The air seemed to grow still around her. Her long silver robes moved with grace. Her royal guards followed behind but stopped when she raised a hand. She stood in front of Kai, tall and proud. "You saved my son," she said, in clear, deep English. "No human has ever shown us such mercy." Kai stayed silent. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small round device. It glowed faintly. She offered it to him. "This is the mark of honor. Only one outside my bloodline has ever received." Kai hesitated, then took it. It was light and warm in his hand. "I didn't do it for reward," he said. "I know," the queen replied. "That's why it means something." She looked around. "The war may continue, but today, something
changed."
Kai nodded slowly. As she turned to leave, she said one last thing. "If you ever call for me, I will answer." She walked back up the ramp. The ship's engines began to hum. Rin appeared in the window, pressing his hand to the glass. Kai watched. As the royal ship rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds, the valley fell quiet again. The scouts walked up beside him. "That was unreal," one said. Kai looked at the small glowing badge in his hand. "Yeah, it was." Later, when they returned to base, the commanders questioned everything. Reports were made. Some people didn't believe the story. Others did, but stayed silent. Kai handed in his gear and quietly left the camp. He had no need for medals or speeches. He had already been given something more important: peace in his heart. Far across the stars, in the Zerelian capital, Queen Thalira held her son close every night. And on a small shelf beside the royal throne, she kept something special. A photo taken from a drone. In it, a tired human soldier stood in front of her child, arms open, protecting him. It reminded her that even in war, kindness could still live. In the shining royal palace of the Zerelian Empire, Queen Thalira stood before her high council. Around her, tall alien figures sat in silence. Some looked surprised. Others looked angry. The queen's voice echoed across the chamber. "My son is alive," she said firmly, "and a human brought him back." Gasps filled the room. One elder stood up. "Your Majesty, how can you trust the word of a human?" Queen Thalira raised her hand to silence him. "I do not trust words. I saw it with my own eyes. He protected Rin. He fed him, cared for him, and risked his life to send him home." The council members looked at each other. Another elder spoke. "But they are our enemies. The humans attacked us first." The queen's eyes narrowed. "And we attacked them in return. How long will we blame one another? How many more must die before someone chooses mercy?" The room fell silent again. Rin stood beside her, holding a small stone Kai had given him before they said goodbye. It was nothing special, just a smooth, black stone from the valley. But to Rin, it was a treasure, a gift from the human who had treated him like a friend. Meanwhile, far away, on the outer edges of human-controlled space, Kai had returned to his quiet life. He no longer wore armor or carried a weapon. He spent his days helping rebuild small villages damaged by the war. To most people, he was just a former soldier trying to move on. But every now and then, he would look at the sky and wonder how Rin was doing. One evening, while walking back from repairing a house, Kai saw a strange light in the sky. At first, he thought it was just a meteor, but the light moved slowly, too steady to be falling. A ship. It landed just beyond the hills. Kai grabbed a flashlight and walked toward it, ready for anything. When he reached the ship, he saw a familiar symbol painted on its side. Zerelian. Royal colors. He stopped. Then, from the ship's ramp, a figure stepped out. Tall, graceful, wearing silver robes that shimmered in the moonlight. Queen Thalira. Behind her, 2 guards stood silently. And between them was Rin. Kai froze. "What are you doing here?" The queen stepped forward. "I made a promise. If you ever called for me, I would answer. But this time, I came because I wished to see you again. Rin ran to Kai and hugged him tightly. The boy had grown a little, but his smile hadn't changed. Kai knelt and hugged him back. You look stronger now. I missed you, Rin said softly. The Queen waited until they stood. He talks about you often. He calls you his hero, Kai smiled. He's the real hero. I just helped. Queen Thalira looked at the quiet land around them. The war is still burning in some systems. But because of you, my heart changed. I speak to my people with different words now. Words of hope, not just battle. Kai nodded. I'm glad. She reached into her robe and handed him a small device. This is a communicator. If you ever need help, press this. Kai took it, surprised. You trust me with this? You earned it, she said. Not just by saving a prince, but by saving a mother's heart. Rin looked up. Can I stay for a little while? The Queen smiled. Yes, just for a while. That night, Kai lit a small fire near his cabin. Rin sat beside him, asking questions about Earth, about food, animals, and stories. The Queen sat nearby, listening quietly. And for one peaceful evening, there was no war, no hate. Just the quiet bond between a human, an alien child, and a queen who had once believed all hope was lost. Morning light touched the sky as Kai stepped out of his small cabin. The air was cool and a soft breeze moved through the tall grass. Birds chirped nearby, something he had missed during the long war. Rin was already outside, chasing a small insect with joy in his eyes. His laughter echoed across the field. It was the sound of peace. Kai watched him with a smile. Just months ago, Rin had been a scared child in a crash pod. Now he looked alive, free. Queen Thalira stood by a tree, watching too. Her long silver robe shimmered in the sunlight. Her expression was calm but thoughtful. He's happy here, she said softly. Kai nodded. He's strong. He'll be fine anywhere. The Queen looked at Kai. And you? Are you fine? Kai shrugged. I'm getting there. One day at a time. She stepped closer. You could come with us, to Zerelia. You would be welcomed. Honored. Kai shook his head gently. That's not my place. My world is here. There was a pause. Then the Queen gave a soft smile. You are a strange man, Kai. Brave, but quiet. Strong, but gentle. Kai laughed. I've been called worse. They both looked back at Rin, who had now sat down in the grass, drawing in the dirt with a stick. I thought I had lost him forever, the Queen said. Her voice was calm, but there was deep emotion behind it. When his ship fell, something inside me broke. I turned all my pain into anger. Kai listened quietly. But then I saw you standing between him and danger, she continued. A human. The very enemy I once cursed. Protecting my child. She looked at Kai. That changed everything. He looked down. I didn't plan any of this. I just saw someone who needed help. And that, she said, is why you are different. They walked together to where Rin sat. The boy looked up and smiled at both of them. Are we going back today? He asked. The Queen knelt beside him. Yes, my son, it's time. Rin looked at Kai. His smile faded a little. Will I see you again? Kai crouched beside him. I think so. You have a communicator now, and I'll always be here if you need me. Rin nodded, then hugged him tightly. Kai closed his eyes and held him for a long moment. When they let go, the Queen placed her hand on Kai's shoulder. You didn't just save a prince. You opened a door between our peoples. That will not be forgotten. Rin walked to the ship, slowly, glancing back again and again. Kai stood by the field, watching as the Zerelian ship lifted into the sky. The soft hum of its engines filled the air. He raised his hand in farewell. Rin pressed his hand to the window just like he had the first time they were separated. Then the ship vanished into the clouds. Kai stood there for a while, the wind brushing against his face. Back in the Zarelian capital, Queen Thalira addressed her people. She told them the full truth, that a human had saved her son, that not all humans were enemies. That peace could begin, not with governments or weapons, but with choices, like the one a lone soldier had made. Across the galaxy, the story spread. People from both sides talked. Walls of hate began to shake, even if only a little, and Kai, far away on his quiet world, continued his simple life. But now there was something new. A message from Rin came once a week, sometimes with drawings, sometimes with questions, sometimes just to say hello. Kai always replied. He kept the badge the Queen gave him inside a small wooden box, not to show off but to remember, to remind himself that even during war doing the right thing mattered, because one soldier, one child, and one mother, together, had changed the course of two worlds, not through power, but through kindness.